Welcome, everybody. Today is August 13th, and the workshop agenda setting meeting is called to order at 5:45. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Black,
Present.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Here.
Commissioner Weinstein,
Here.
Commissioner Andrews,
Here.
Commissioner Douthat.
Present.
All right, the first item on the agenda for the workshop agenda setting meeting, A, is the performance evaluation of our city attorney, Mr. Ralf Brookes. And I was kind of surprised to see this on here because he is a contractual employee and we've never evaluated him in the past. So my recommendation would be to table this and, or not table it, but to just take it off the agenda. Setting meeting.
It's our job as the commission to do the evaluations for the charter officers, and Mr. Brookes is one of the charter officers. So I feel like we would need to complete the evaluation for him.
I agree with that. The fact that Ralph has never had one is a perfect reason to have one, I think. I think it's good. So I'm kind of for it. I am for it.
I'm good with discussing it. Yeah, I don't think it'd take too long. Might as well chat about it. Just leave it on there then.
Okay, that's fine. And then the next item is beach chair vendor agreement. Do you want to explain that a little bit, or do we need it explained?
You know, what I would like to see is, when we get this, is get a copy of the current contract. Make sure we have a copy of the contract.
Right.
Yeah, we just to give you quick background information, I've had some preliminary discussions with them about some potential changes. The thought, and I've sent it to Mr. Brookes as well, I would include those changes struck out in the original contract, so you would see the changes as they are, or as proposed,
Okay.
and then just review from there as you all please. They're up for a renewal in October, and they've already expressed their interest, written interest within their window. So this is just, routine part of it with a few changes, and then the changes will be up to you all.
Jay,
Okay, so.
which ones are they? The ones behind the snack shack? Or the
Yes,
ones
ma'am,
further
that's
down?
saltwater destination. The ones behind Snack Shack, and then at some of the beach accesses in John's Pass.
I thought we already discussed that at one point.
We did discuss it. This is basically, we were letting you all know that they had expressed their interest to re-up.
And they're
then
going to
now
make
we're-
changes too, you said?
Yes.
Oh.
We had to make sure that we could make changes, and as long
Okay.
as it has board approval, we would be okay.
Okay,
So.
great. Madam Mayor, I'd like to add something to the workshop, if I may. I've received some information regarding the Tom Stewart Bridge over your 150th, and to see what we can do about setting it up on a schedule for the opening and closing of the bridge. There was some information that was given to me, and it came directly from Miami, and then the Coast Guard. So there is a good possibility, maybe if we can work with them, we might be able to set the bridge up where it would open on a set time, maybe every 30 minutes instead of whenever a boat came by, open the bridge and stop the traffic. So this might alleviate some of the traffic on 150th also. So if I may, I'd like to add it to the next workshop so I can bring in the information I have and we can discuss it.
All right.
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea.
I'd also like to add, I would just like a recap of and I hate to bring up the word again, but the fireworks. I was looking at the consent agenda from when we did it, and I'm a little confused on it, and I think, if we could just get just an outlay of what happened and why it was moved and why it does not coincide with what we agreed upon. I mean, if changes were made, that's fine. I mean, I think the changes need to be discussed in front of us, and I'm not trying to, it reminds me a little bit, and I hate to say this, about the generator, where we all thought the generator was going over to the rec center. I don't think our job is just to allocate money. I think, we need to be given detailed instructions on what's going to go on. And I think that in both cases, I think that, maybe we dedicated the money, but I don't think we are completely in the loop. Because, I mean, I up until 2 days, I didn't know the fireworks were changed until up to 2 days before, and I was not told by staff. So, and it was completely different than what we saw. So I would just like to chat about that. And I can't bring up the generator move or the differences in the generator thing, but I think that needs to be discussed as well, because that's not what we discussed either. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, today, under my report, I'm going to update you on the generator during the meeting. But if you want to go into it further, we can at the workshop meeting as well. In reference to the 4th of July, would you like me to do the same thing? We'll just report back at the workshop? The fireworks, I mean? Okay.
Mayor, I have a couple of items that I'd like to add to the August 27th workshop. The first one is, on May the 14th was the last time that we discussed the design studio plan on a large scope, which none of us kind of went for that large scope for Johns Pass Village improvements. The money is, some of it's already there and some of it's in next year's budget, and I would really like to go back to the drawing board, because on the May 14th meeting, the kind of committee, I guess it was Carrier and Deb Laramie, were going to bring to us a more broken down idea of what it would cost for different phases of that work to be done. Okay, so I'd like for that to be on there. And then the second item is the Seafood Festival is coming up in October, and the commission is now tasked with the parking lots, okay, at 130th, all the beach accesses from 135th to back down to South Beach. And there was some discussion at one of the previous meetings a couple of months ago about a daily rate versus an hourly rate. And I think we need to start talking about that. City manager might have some information on that. I'd also like to know, for the Seafood Festival, and perhaps you can get this, the advertising that they've been doing to date, okay, for the event, because they publicize it, they give us a tremendous amount of, advertising throughout the 50 states. And also, in line with that, in the past, private homeowners' parking lots have charged anywhere from $15 to $30 a day during Seafood Festival. And perhaps Deputy Schneider will need to be a part of that talk, because we need to uniform that. It's uniformed in all these other great cities. It's either $20 or $25. Everybody charges the same thing. Nobody feels like they've gotten, a little bit ripped off. So I'd like for that to be a part of that discussion. And then I'd like an update from Jay Hatch on the fitness center. I know if that's a moot issue, or if we're going to do something else with that, we need to talk about it and get it out of the way. So thank you.
Do you have anything?
Yes, I got several.
Okay.
One I'd like to discuss.
No, we didn't. Thank you. Do we have a?
I'm sorry, once we get closer, I think we can have that discussion. I don't think there's all that much advertising that's out about it right now. It's a much smaller event this year. It's down to 3 days instead of 4. And, I don't even know if there's going to be anything sensible to even talk about as far as that's concerned. I would like to talk about the parking, which, I'm dead set against, but I know we're proceeding forward on. But yeah, as far as the marketing and bringing Sunny out here, Sunny's been in front of us way too many times. Let her just have her event, and we'll do a recap afterwards as far as that stuff's concerned. But the other stuff is all internal stuff. We can talk about that. But to drag her out here again to discuss that seems meaningless to me.
I'd just like to have all of our ducks in a row. Thank you.
We need one more person to have say it.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to talk about the smoking on the beach.
I was going to mention that.
Okay. I'd also like to discuss what I brought up a couple meetings ago about the entertainment committee. and I'll be meeting with Jay on that. I'd also like to, because you guys said that you wanted to discuss it, was the road project committee, just said what their job is or what their, what we're going to be. The road construction committee to help with Al, and you guys said that you wanted to kind of discuss, what their duties and responsibilities would be on that committee.
Can I just stop you first? What, the entertainment committee, what would they do?
They would kind of be like a 3 or 5 person committee, and they would work with Jay on, recommendations, plus, minus, bringing new people in, new things in, whatever the case may be.
Okay.
Special events committee.
Special, yeah. Event,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Special event, yeah, I'm sorry. I would like to get an update on where we're at with the vessels, the boats in the intercoastal waterway, what we're doing about that. We talked about it, but I haven't heard anything. I would, once again, we talked about, and I'm looking at this thing right here about the network server, and there's, the fiscal impact, but what we asked for was, what's the 5-year fiscal impact? Not just next year or the year that we're in, but what's the 5-year fiscal impact, because that's what this board should be looking at. And on this one right here that they just put in front of us, once again, it's only right now. They're not talking about what it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and that's the things that we should be considering. And last but not least, I would like to discuss putting all new construction on hold until we get back, till the gentleman with the impact fees get back with us.
Okay.
Ralph, is that even legal? Are we allowed to put a halt on people submitting permits and doing construction? I mean, I'm just asking. I'm not even sure if that's a.
It would be called a moratorium, or a temporary moratorium would be legal. You'd have to go through the notice proceedings to do that. I can give you a memo on it if that's something you wanted to do.
Or Ralph, could you tell us how we could, because listening to Jerry the other day, when he talked to us, I guess, I think it was his name, wasn't it, Jerry? Mr. Murphy? He said, we could do that, or we could put, something into the contract with the city that when the impact fees came about, that they would, so it didn't stop the construction, but they would have to go back and pay it pending on what the board here decided on the impact fees, if I remember correctly.
Jerry's here today, and he's going to be working on the impact fees with staff tomorrow morning to come up with a list, and that's something we can address probably at staff level. If you want to report at the next workshop on how they're doing on the impact fees, we certainly could do that.
What our position is, can we, for collecting it down the road, if someone comes in next month or 3 months from now and we still haven't got the impact fees, can we add it to it depending on what the impact fees are, or do we need to put a moratorium on the building until we get the impact fees? That's what I'm trying to find out.
Okay, we'll put something on the workshop agenda there.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had, Madam Mayor.
All right, so John wants to put liveaboards, talk about liveaboards, and that's good because we do need to, I believe, the deputy said that we do need more teeth in our ordinance for that.
We need what?
More teeth in that
Okay.
ordinance. So you want that, special events, road project committee, update on vessels and on liveaboards, network server discussion, and talking about new construction tool and
smoking
impact
on the
fees.
beach. And the smoking.
Oh,
on
and the
beach.
smoking on the beach. Okay. Does anybody have anything else? Yes.
We do have an ordinance change. It'll be coming before you at your September regular meeting for first reading for the liveaboards.
For the liveaboard?
Yeah. But I can address that at the workshop, but,
Okay.
it's.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I think no one has anything further. We are adjourned at 6 o'clock. Smiling faces here. Today is August 13th, and the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners is called to order at 6 o'clock. Will Vice Mayor please lead us in the invocation and pledge of allegiance?
Our Father in heaven, give us the power to clearly discern right from wrong. Allow our words and actions to be governed thereby and by the laws of this land. We ask for your inspiration to strive in our endeavors to serve the public. We also ask that you direct us so that above all things, we will discharge our duties for the benefit of the people we serve. Amen.
Will City Clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Black,
Present.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Here.
Commissioner Weinstein,
Here.
Commissioner Andrews, Commissioner Douthat,
Present.
Do we have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes.
Mayor Black.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is proclamation in recognition of the 2019-14 U Babe Ruth World Series champions. Congratulations.
Okay, I have the proclamation here I'll be reading. Whereas the hard work, dedication, sportsmanship, talent, and exceptional team chemistry of the 2019-14 and under Madeira Beach Riptide softball team has allowed these young ladies to earn the 2019 Babe Ruth World Series championship, and whereas winning the 2019 Babe Ruth 14 and under World Series championship has brought recognition to Madeira Beach Youth Baseball and Softball Organization, Babe Ruth District 10, Pinellas County, the City of Madeira Beach, both locally and on a national level. And whereas the dedication of each athlete, coach, parent, and volunteer within the organization was integral to building, supporting, and guiding the team to victory throughout their support. Now therefore, on behalf of Mayor Maggie Black, by virtue of her authority as Mayor of City of Madeira Beach, Florida, do hereby proclaim August 13, 2019 as Madeira Beach Riptide Day in the City of Madeira Beach, and urge all members of the community to join in recognition of the significant achievement by the young ladies who make up the Madeira Beach 14 and under softball team.
First and foremost, we want to thank the City of Madeira Beach. Without your support, this program would not be where we are today. We have grown leaps and bounds over the years. As I've told many people before, we started with one team several years ago, some of which are behind you here as little girls. And now we have 11, and we're probably going to be still growing. The community has really helped us out tremendously throughout the years. We've had tons of support. And without, again, the city backing us over the years, we would not be where we are now. So thank you very much, the City of Madeira Beach, for supporting us and getting us to where we are today. On a side note, Mr. Doug Andrews, thank you again. Without his support, back in the tumultuous days of where we were when we were Gulf Beach's Little League, we were 53 years we were Gulf Beach's Little League, and it was a big change for us to switch over from Little League to Babe Ruth. And Doug, thank you very much for your continued support. We really appreciate that. So again, our girls have put in a lot of hard work and effort, and it's produced a World Series. It's hard to believe our little group of girls are now actually World Series champions, but they put the work in, and we would like to present, Ms. Mayor, our World Series trophy to you. Hopefully, you all will appreciate it as much as we do. You deserve it as much as these girls have put into. Without your financial support, again, we would not have been able to make this happen. So thank you very much. I'd like to present that to the city.
this is heavy, number one. But you guys have done an amazing job. To win the World Series, and I understand you did it undefeated, is even greater. So we are so proud of you, and the city thanks you so much. Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm right back here. I'll go right around you. Madam Mayor, just turn and face me if you would.
Oh. I got it.
Everybody's got to squeeze in nice and tight for me. Come on. God, there's a lot of you. I got my shots. Everybody behind me okay? Thank you.
It's still heavy.
Thank you again.
Congratulations. Guess I know how to clear a room.
Okay,
All right, next on the agenda is the certificate of completion presented to Commissioner Debbie Weinstein for completion of the 2019 Advanced Institute for Elected Municipal Officials.
great. And as we all know, continuing education helps us do our jobs better everywhere that we go. So I just wanted to take time out and present this certificate of completion to Commissioner Debbie Weinstein of the City of Madeira Beach.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
Any words?
Thank you.
you. You do it? You do
Yep,
it.
the two of you right there. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
It's the only time I look tall.
Congratulations. Next on the agenda, we have the presentation by John Hauser. Director Pierce.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, John Hauser is here to present the 2018 audit and talk about the comprehensive annual financial report of the CAFR.
Are we going to get a copy of the audit report? It says that in here. Are we going to get a copy of it?
I sent out an email that we already provided you the CAFR electronically and hard copy, and that if you wanted a copy, we'd have one in our office.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for having me tonight. My name is John Hauser. I'm a partner with the firm of Wells, Hauser, and Schatzel, the independent auditors for the City of Madeira Beach. We've completed our audit for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2018. I'd like to review the audit reports and then a quick overview of the statement of net position. And it'll take about 15 minutes or so for me to get through this, but I'd be glad to address questions at the end. The reports, there's a separate report that was included in your agenda packet. It's called the Required Communication to Those Charged with Governance. It does indicate that the city implemented Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 75 for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2018. This reflects the total other post-employment benefits obligation of the city and the deferred inflows and outflows for that same obligation. There were no other new accounting standards or policies, and existing policies were not changed. Significant estimates, the most significant estimate in the financial statements are the useful lives of the depreciable assets, which affects your depreciation expense for the enterprise funds and for the governmental funds on a government-wide basis. The lives used by the city are in accordance with, based on class lives used in governmental accounting, so we deem the lives to be reasonable and consistent. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management or the employees during our audit procedures, and we had no disagreements with management during our audit. We were provided all the information we requested, and all our inquiries were timely responded to. There were 3 significant audit entries that were proposed, reviewed with staff. Staff agrees, and those entries have been posted to the books of the city. In the general fund, there was an increase in accounts payable that related to contract engineering services and flood mitigation grant reimbursement to a homeowner. This increased accounts payable and expenditures in the general fund of a little over $90,000. There were 2 entries in the stormwater fund. Principal debt payments in the amount of $362,000 were reclassified from current year expense to reduce the related liability. This entry decreased expenses and decreased the long-term liability of the debt. Also in the stormwater fund, construction in progress and accounts payable were related to prior year accounts payable that had not been reversed. The entry decreased asset construction in progress and decreased the accounts payable for a net financial statement effect of 0, but the amount was $460,000. Consultations with other independent accountants. As you're aware, the city did engage other accountants to perform a forensic audit of the marina operations. The result of the audit contained findings and recommendations to improve the marine operations and internal controls. The city formulated a corrective action plan that has been presented to the City Commission to address the audit findings and the recommendations. We would recommend that the corrective action plan be monitored as to the progress in the implementation of those recommendations. Other findings that we had under grants administration. You do have the flood mitigation grants, which are federal funds and may be subject to single audit once they exceed a threshold. And federal regulations now require you to have written grant policies and procedures and procurement policies and procedures as it relates to the grant funds. So we would recommend the city have written policies and procedures and standards to conduct surrounding procurement related to those federal grants, and it would also apply to any state or local grants, just an overall grants policy. Right now, there are no written formal procedures for administration of grants. The standards should really address from the application process with the grant all the way to the grant closeout, including procurement. Our test of the building department cash receipts disclosed the city was not properly calculating the permit surcharge fee on building permits. There's 2 components to the fee that total 2.5%. The city was calculating the fee as surcharge as 1.5%. When this was brought to the staff's attention, they immediately addressed it. Staff then worked to determine the amount that should have been collected and remitted, and those amounts have now been remitted to the state of Florida. Also, too, the rate within the building permit fee schedule within the system was updated to properly calculate the fee at 2.5% amount. Our test of recreation cash receipts disclosed the charge of $8 was used in the system for non-resident after-school care with a sibling discount. And this charge was not previously included in the city fees schedule ordinance. Based on the recreation after-school brochure that was on the recreation website, it would appear the actual rate should have been $9. The city's reviewed and updated the fee schedule ordinance to now address all fees charged by the city, and the system rate tables have been updated to correspond to the ordinance fees. Within the CAFR itself, it's a pretty large document, over 100 pages. There are 5 other reports. Our independent auditor's report is on page 1. It basically states we've audited the financial statements for September 30, 2018. It's management's responsibility for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And it's our opinion, it's our responsibility to express an opinion based on our audit. And based on our procedures, we concluded that we've obtained sufficient evidence in order to issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That is, there are no departures from GAAP or generally accepted accounting principles, and the financials fairly present the results of operations and the financial position of the city. Towards the back of the CAFR, there's starting on page 84, there's a report on internal control and compliance. We noted one significant deficiency. As we reported in our required communication report, the permit surcharge fee was not being properly calculated. We noted one instance of noncompliance, Florida Statute 553721, as it pertains to that one component of that building permit fee was not being adhered to. Once again, the city's corrected that in the rate table and also determined the amount to be remitted. The amount was around $37,000 that the city determined. Management's response to our finding can be found on page 86 of the CAFR. Our independent auditor's management letters on page 87 and 88, and this report's required by the Auditor General of the state of Florida. There were no prior year findings for follow-up, and current year findings will be followed up in our report for 9/38/19. Report indicates we've considered whether the city met any conditions that would indicate the city's in a state of financial emergency. We determined the city did not meet any of those conditions. We've applied financial condition assessment procedures to the financial statements, and these are 24 financial ratios of data over a 5-year period that compares the city to other similar cities or benchmarks. The benchmark group is small. There's only 4 other cities comparable to the city of Madeira Beach, and when I say comparable, that's the fund structure, the population, and the taxable value. Benchmark cities included the town of Bell Harbor Village, city of Daytona Beach Shores, town of Highland Beach, and the city of Indian Rocks Beach. And once you complete this and you do the comparisons and the ratios, you determine whether the rating is favorable, inconclusive, or unfavorable. You have to have 60% in one category to achieve that benchmark, that rating. Overall, the rating was inconclusive, which is what we see in most evaluations we do of this nature. Overall, the city was 38% favorable, 33% inconclusive, and 29% unfavorable. So either inconclusive or favorable, you were not more towards the unfavorable side. So you are comparable to other cities. The rules of the Auditor General require we communicate any recommendations. Once again, we'd recommend the city test its billing systems on an ongoing basis to ensure the appropriate fees are charged, collected, and if applicable, remitted to outside agencies. This is really important when you adopt an ordinance that changes the fees. We also are required to communicate any instance of noncompliance, and as we previously noted, the Florida Statute 553, as it pertains to the 1% permit surcharge fee, was a compliance exception. The 2 last reports, one has to do with investments, the other has to do with your oil spill monies. We determined the city was in compliance with the Florida statutes and their own investment policy as it pertains to investments, and also the Deepwater Horizon oil spill funds. There were no amounts received and there were no amounts expended. The unexpended portion of the funds you did receive is a component of fund balance. The government-wide statement of net position is like a balance sheet. It includes all the long-term assets and liabilities of the city. For 9/30/18, the total assets decreased about 1%, or around $500,000. The biggest change, of course, was the decrease in liabilities of about $1.9 million. During the year, long-term debt had a net decrease of $1.2 million. Accounts payable, retainages payable, accrued items decreased about $700,000. So overall, your net position increased 1.4 million or 4% over the prior year. Your net investment in capital assets increased about 2.7 million. Your restricted net position decreased 1.4, but that's because it was used to complete capital projects and also for the debt service, whether it be interest or principal payments. And your unrestricted net position increased about $103,000. The unrestricted net position equates to about 10 months of expenditures. So you have ample reserves that are available for appropriation. The city does have a fund balance policy, and those requirements were met for 9/30/18. You have a minimum unassigned fund balance of 2 months of budgeted expenditures. That minimum would be a little over $1.2 million, when the actual unassigned fund balance was about $3.3 million. So you have ample unassigned fund balance and meet that requirement. You also have a part of the policy provision for emergency storm response reserve that's equal to 1/3 of the budgeted expenditures. And that amount equates to about $2.4 million, and it's reflected as an emergency reserve in the CAFR. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank the city staff for their assistance during this long process. Everything was provided we asked for. Our inquiries were timely responded to. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'll be glad to address those now.
Hey, John, I got a quick one. How you doing? I don't know if you remember me. I was the rec director.
Yes, I do,
How you been,
Commissioner.
man?
Yes, good.
You beat me over the head quite a bit, so I just wanted to say hi. But anyway, I do have a quick question for you. Your name was kind of bandied about here over the last year as being kind of the one who spearheaded or recommended this marina audit. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I just kind of want to know, what did you see that you thought, that an audit was produced? And then when you saw the audit and it turned into not really an audit and then just a forensic examination, what were your thoughts on that? I just for clarity.
Yeah, this actually occurred while we were performing the September 30 of 17 audit. We performed analytical procedures, and there were just some results of those procedures that fell outside of our expected results. There was a high inventory turnover. There was a low gross profit margin. I came to speak with Walt Pierce and indicated that, it's really outside of the financial audit, outside of the scope of what we were doing here with the financial audit. At that time, I says, we can expand that scope, but it would be at a different engagement. And Walt then brought it to the city manager, and it morphed into what became the forensic audit. The decision was made to hire other outside accountants, but the onset of it was analytical procedures that just didn't meet our expectations.
Did you read it? Did you get a chance to read it?
2,116 pages.
You read it all?
Well, a lot of that are the supporting schedules. But yes, I, of course, did read that report, as well as the corrective action plan the city has to address those findings and recommendations.
Okay. Was that part of the CAPFR? Is that going to be part of next year's to go over the corrective action plan to see the follow-up steps and everything that's going through it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I had one comment. I checked with Walt on all of the questions that I had pertaining to most of it, but this is really not for you, John, but it's just for the commission's information. I was not pleased when I saw on page 81 of your audit with regards to the public safety, how those figures have declined. I thought pretty noticeably from previous years. I don't know what it's with regards to, but I hope that I haven't asked the city manager to look into it or our fire chief to make sure that those figures were actually reported correctly to you. And if they were, then why are we seeing a decline? But the rest of it, Walt put me on the right.
Yeah, I can comment limited response here in that these statistical schedules that are included with the CAFR are for purposes of additional analysis and are not subjected to our audit procedures. So there's no verification. We express no opinion on these schedules themselves. They're compiled by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. They're cumulative, added to year by year. There's 10 years of information here, but I do see, you may be saying, in both arrests made and citations issued, there's been a decline. You can look at that one of two ways. Enforcement is working and people are not offending, or there's less enforcement. I think the Sheriff's Office would tell you people are more in compliance and maybe not offending. That would be my guess.
That, but we'll check on it too.
Okay.
Well, I've got a question. When it says the city shall provide emergency storm response reserve equal to 33% of the budget, did we not change that?
Former
Did we
city,
cap it?
the
Did we cap it?
former city manager and myself looked at that, and we felt that we had enough, and we presented our opinion to the board, and we put a resolution to halt that.
Yeah, we capped it.
Yes.
At
So I've already.
2 million or 2.5?
It's
What would we cap it at?
It's 2.4 right now, as John indicated. I've already indicated to John that we put forth that resolution to the board, and it was approved, and he normally calculates that for us when he does the audit, and so I've already informed him that we have halted that.
Each year we review all the resolutions and ordinances that are approved by the City Commission. One of those that creates this emergency storm response is your fund balance policy. And policies can be changed. So certainly if that was adopted by resolution or ordinance and it changes that policy, it would affect what gets reflected in your CAFR as far as what that amount, if any, would be.
Yeah, I think they came to us and said that the insurance company said that we had more than enough money to cover any expenses that the city would have, period. So why are we continuing to put into that? Am I correct?
That is correct, and also the fact that, as John indicated, we have a healthy, unrestricted fund balance as well that we could draw upon. So it's not just the money in the emergency reserve, it's the money in the unrestricted as well that we would have to draw on.
Okay.
So
I
if
just
we
wanted to make
had
sure I understood that correctly.
So if we had a severe emergency, right now, we would have probably over $6 million to unrestricted to draw upon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Please remember, this is only for items that are not on the agenda. You'll be given a chance to speak to those that are on the agenda when they come up. Your time is limited to 3 minutes. Please remember to be civil and respectful, and to state your name, address, and give your full name and speak directly into the mic.
Hi, good evening, Robert Preston, 425 South Bayshore Drive, Madeira Beach. I guess I just want to talk to your agenda setting or your work session and what Commissioner Douthert said about the impact fees, and to inhibit any permits because you want to wait for those impact fees. This commission in the past has, only in my opinion, has been punitive in nature on some of the people that are trying to develop in this town. So it is my understanding that impact fees should not be punitive, but should be something that you can place a value or a specific impact on it and use it for those things, whether it's for sewer, whether it's for sidewalks, whether it's for crosswalks, or things like that. And I'm 100% for that. But if you just want to jab people for money, I am 100% against that. And I hope Mr. Murphy will use his platform to spell out what is the proper use of the impact fees and how they should be used so that you, in the future, this commission do not make the city liable for decisions that you make. So I'm just wanting to point that out. Thank you.
William Howell, 497 Johns Pass Avenue. I would like to raise an issue and ask for the commission to consider adding this to your agenda to look into. The issue is certificates of occupancy in Madeira Beach and the apparent lack of understanding of what a certificate of occupancy is, clearly their lack of enforcement in the city, and the risk that this is putting the city at. If you're not familiar, a certificate of occupancy, often referred to as a CO, it's a document issued by a local government agency, such as Madeira Beach City Government, to certify that a building or other structure that has been built is in compliance with applicable building codes and laws, and that it's in conditions suitable for occupancy and/or use. The state of Florida, in their building code, Section 110.1 states that no building or structure shall be used or occupied until the building official has issued a certificate of occupancy. I'll give you one example that I'm particularly familiar with. Our neighbor installed a preformed swimming pool this spring. Without any inspections having been completed and without a certificate of occupancy being issued, the pool was used repeatedly for parties. This pool construction wasn't even done at that point in time. The surround tiles were not installed, there were mounds of dirt, there were piles of debris, etc. There was also no fence, no safety fence, no construction safety fence. That's a separate item I could speak to you about if you were interested. This was presented to Frank DeSantis, Madeira Beach City's certified building official, on June 5th. He looked at the photographs, the evidence, and said they should not be doing this. This is not allowed. We asked the question, who is going to enforce it then? And he said he did not know who enforces certificates of occupancy. Amazing. He advised that I speak to Sheriff Culateri about it, which I did. And the sheriff said this is not a criminal matter that the sheriff engages in, and that I should return to the city manager and the city mayor to ask who handles certificates of occupancy and the enforcement of them. Going full circle on this, it comes back that our own code enforcement deputies, who we contract with from Pinellas County, are supposed to enforce those certificates of occupancy. I was unable to get those certificates of occupancy enforced, and our certified building officer did not seem to comprehend what a CO was and that a CO needed to be enforced. The lack of understanding of a CO is truly an important matter. Given that Madeira Beach is in the midst of a significant building boom of large hotels and condos, we're putting ourselves at risk if we don't understand how to use certificates of occupancy.
Mr. Howell, your time is up. If you could wrap
And
up.
enforce them.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Public comment is now closed. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I've got one clarification, Madam Mayor. Clara, can you hand these out? board and for Bob. I don't think I have file. Guys, can you look at page 201 of 430 in the consent agenda? I'm sorry, in the approval of the minutes. Well, this is just for clarification. I don't need it pulled. I mean, this was all said. But if you look at the fourth sentence, I just want to let you guys know where I came up with this number of 90% from. In the fourth sentence, the last sentence says he stated that the city, it was meaning me, Commissioner Andrews, stated that the city has lost 90% of its staff in 2 years. If you look at Mr. Evans's memo here on salary compensation, you look at the fiscal impact, over the last 2 years, the turnover in this city was 59.4% in April 2017 to 2018 and 30.3% from 2018 to 2019. I made a mistake. It's only 89.7%, not 90. So I would just like to clarify that, okay? But just so you guys know where I get the number from, if it ever comes up again, it's Jonathan Evans' own work product. It's from our salary and compensation study. So if you read the paragraph afterwards where he says, I put forth anecdotes, half-truths, misstatements, I'm grossly inaccurate, blah, 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 blah. Well, you can see why we had not much in common during his time on the bench. Thank you.
I had a couple of changes, please. If you'll first go to page 140 of 430. Page 140 of 430. It's at the May 28th Board of Commissioners workshop meeting. And I was just going to ask Clara on the very top, Clara, under A, proposed charter amendment discussion. Okay? That part of those minutes ends at the board consented to the item being discussed by the Charter Review Committee, and then the next three items. Can you put that in another section, because that does not pertain at all to proposed charter amendment discussion? Can you do that? Okay. So that's it for there. And then if we can go to the June 11th, let me look at it. I'll tell you what page. Okay. You know how I go through these minutes, Clara. Can you just add, I know it might be a very simple thing, it's on page 159 of 430, up at the very top, where it said Vice Mayor Hodges commented that she feels they need the chambers in there. And I kept thinking, what does that mean? What does that mean? But it's the Chambers of Commerce, so could you just add that, please? I knew it was something small. And on the, okay, give me just a minute. I'm sorry, I messed my pages up here. Go to the June, okay, back to the June 11th. It was such a weird, oh yes, okay. So go to go to page 145 of 430, under the approval of the agenda. And Commissioner Weinstein pointed out that they had removed the DS Law Review. And I kept thinking, what in the world is the DS Law Review? But it's not, it was DS Law Review. The DS, you remember when we used to have that log? So it's not a law review at all, okay? And then okay. Then if we can go to page 164 of 430. And down at the bottom of page 164, 165, and 166, If you'll change that date down there, it says May 14th. Would you do that? Okay, and change that to July 1st, because that's when it's supposed to be. And if you'll make those corrections, then I would certainly, and that's on the consent agenda, and thank you.
I have a question and a correction. On page 122, under invocation and pledge of allegiance, you've got Commissioner Nancy Hodges, it should be Vice Mayor. Minor. And then page 184, it shows that we were all present, but the invocation and pledge was led by Jonathan Evans.
For some reason, he led that one particular night.
did?
It was on
Oh,
July
Yes, at the
9th.
last meeting, he did
Yes.
do the invocation and the
Yes.
Pledge of Allegiance.
That does
Yes.
seem familiar now. Okay,
Yes,
I was
yes.
wondering. That's about it. Any more comments about the minutes? No. All right, item B in the consent agenda is Planning Commission appointment. And I would like to take this, to table this to, I guess, the end of December to have that discussion, because at first we thought that we only had till the end of August to appoint somebody, but now we found out we have till the end of September. So that'll give us a chance for more people to apply.
Okay, I agree.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I may too, we want to make sure that there's notice given out to, and one other issue that we come up with is the requirement of appointees from the different districts, and that's something that our city attorney and I are looking at, because what happens if we don't get volunteers for any of these boards? This one just happens to be the Planning Commission, but we don't get enough from each district, and we need to have some type of a plan, so we'll be working on that as well.
Can I ask you a quick question? Is Robin currently on the board, or is her term up?
Her term comes up September 30th.
Okay, so, I mean,
So we have time. She was
yeah, I mean,
notified.
let's try to get that over with before, so we don't have an opening on the board. Can we do this in September?
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay.
scheduled
Oh,
for the
okay. I thought we were
September
talking about
meeting.
this. I thought I heard December. I'm sorry. I got water in my ear.
I'm sorry if
My
I
bad.
didn't pronunciate correctly.
But if I remember correctly, we had 2 people left over from the last time. Did we contact them, or were you putting their applications? Okay, because there was 3 last time. We selected 1, and there was 2 that we did not select. And I was wondering why their applications weren't in here.
In the future, you'll
What you were
have,
talking about, ain't it? I think that's what the mayor was talking about today.
Okay.
Yeah.
in the future, you'll have all the applications to look at and to make your decision. And we're also formalizing our process, so it'll be in writing as well.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the changes?
I make the motion to accept the consent agenda with the changes on the minutes.
I'll second.
Will City Clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes?
Commissioner Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Downthard,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Mayor Black.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is ordinance 2019-06. City Clerk?
Ordinance by heading, ordinance by title, ordinance 2019-06, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending ordinance 2018-03, the fees and collections procedures, providing for conflict, providing for severability, and providing for an immediate effective date.
Commissioners, this is a case where we're kind of correcting an error. We had gone ahead and approved its second reading without reading the title. And then we read the title afterwards, and we didn't vote again. So just to make sure that there's absolutely no way anyone can challenge that, we want to go ahead and vote again now, do the roll call vote again now.
Am I looking at the right thing? Network people?
No, that was part of the consent agenda.
Oh,
We're on the,
I'm way off. Okay,
we're
thank
doing
you.
an actual, like, third reading of an ordinance. Instead of just having two readings, we're doing a third reading.
Page
Okay.
303.
We had
I
voted
got you,
already
I got you.
to,
I'm sorry.
to
I lost
approve
that.
the fee manual. And we had read the title after the vote instead of before the vote, so we want to do it again in the correct order, reading the title, which we just did. So we want to do a roll call vote again, just so we memorialize that, so no one can challenge the fee manual, the fee setting.
Okay, so we need to open, well, actually, we've done the agenda item was open. The clerk read by ordinance, by the title, so now we have open public comment, right?
Yep, and then you take a roll call vote again. Mayor, if you'd like to open for public comment, if there is any.
This item is open for public comment at this time.
You
Item
can
is
close the
closed.
public comment and then take the roll call.
Public comment is closed.
We get a motion to approve and second, and then a roll call vote.
Well, no, we can discuss again, can't we?
You can if you want to.
Okay, yeah, I just want to renew my objection to the alcohol management fee. I know we were going to discuss this again, and Ralph, I don't know if you looked at it as far as whether or not that's a liability or not for us to be putting out a document for a permit to sell alcohol, and it's never been reworded either, and that's kind of hold on, I'm finding it right now. 327?
Yep, today we just wanted to memorialize what we did before, but we did talk about going back at some point. And
Where we were talking about
looking at that.
changing the wording on the, if we're accepting it, the alcohol management fee, which again, I'm against. The fourth item on that is, in the event the organizer chooses not to pay the alcohol event management fee, the city of Madeira Beach maintains the right of refusal for the service of alcohol at the event. I think we all agreed that that was not a responsible thing for us to do. If somebody doesn't want alcohol at their event, we shouldn't be able to walk in there and say, okay, well, we want to serve alcohol. Heck with what you guys want. I think these fees are ridiculous, and I don't think that, my vote's going to be the same it's been for every time we've gone through this. Until we get rid of it, I can't vote for this, so just my 2 cents.
Certainly, if it's the majority decision to take that out, you could do that at this third reading if you'd like to. You're not adding, you're taking things out. I think last time they voted to keep it in, but you certainly can take that out if you'd like to.
Do we have a consensus to do that? I'm sorry? You say take it out, and Commissioner Weinstein?
I was go with taking that one out altogether.
I'm fine with leaving it in.
Can I get a consensus?
We're not really looking for consensus here, we're looking for a motion and a second, and then.
I move to adopt ordinance 2019-06 on third reading. Right.
Do we have a second? One more time, do we have a second? Then I guess motion fails.
Make a motion then, Doug.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the third reading of ordinance 2019-06 to disclude the alcohol management fee.
To take out, just to be clear for the record,
Take out item H.
to delete or take out, it's on page 22. It would be subparagraph H.
Just for a point of clarification, you're seeking approval of it minus that one item that you want to remove.
Actually, I'd like to remove all of item H. That's what my motion is, to remove item H, alcohol management fee.
Second.
Any discussion? Will City Clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges?
Yes.
Commissioner Weinstein?
No.
Commissioner Douthat?
Yes.
Mayor Black?
Yes.
Clara, make sure that when we sign the ordinance, that it comes out. Thank you.
Next item is ordinance 2019-13. City Clerk.
Ordinance number 2019-13, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending the City of Madeira Beach personnel policies and procedures, providing for an effective date, severability, and ordinances or resolutions in conflict.
Madam and Commissioners, I wanted to thank you all for, hopefully this is the final time we'll have to bring this before you. The Civil Service has done a really great job going back and adding back in Section 10 that you had requested be put back into the handbook for disciplinary, and it was done, and we did have a consensus. And you approved it on first reading on July the 9th, and then following a discussion on July 22nd workshop, meeting with the Civil Service, you consented to taking it back to the Civil Service meeting for a thorough review due to discrepancy found in the document. The Civil Service Commission and Interim City Manager Daniels completed their review and the documents on July 30th and made recommendation changes for the board to consider on second reading for the public hearing at this BOC meeting today. There's no impact there's no fiscal impact with the approval of the personnel policies and rules regulations. And the recommendation is staff recommends that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 2019-13 after second reading and public hearing with the recommended changes made by the Civil Service and the interim city manager on July 30th, 2019. And I would just like to thank the Civil Service that are here tonight for their volunteering and helping us with this.
The only question I have is, it looks like there's a section about meal breaks that was not included. Was there a reason for that?
I believe that it was asked to be taken out by the Civil Service.
Yeah, I sat in on the meeting, and maybe Bob can expand on it a little bit, but the idea was that I don't think it's actually a regulation. This was something I think that was put into play maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, that if you worked from XYZ to XYZ, you'd have to, even if you sat at your desk and ate, you'd have to put a half hour in there. So technically your time wasn't, if you worked from 8 to 4, you had to put from 8 to 12, and then lunch from 12 to 12:30, and then 12:30 to 4 you worked. The bottom line was, if you didn't take lunch, you're actually putting in a false document. You're putting in a false, time card. So, it was just kind of voted on by these guys. And kudos again, Karen, and I see a couple of the board members. Chair Hendricks is here. Mike, John, you look like a John, sorry. And they're here, but I'll tell you what, that was probably one of the best meetings I've sat on since I've been here. They're not all politically aligned, but boy, they got a lot of stuff done, and they did what's right for the employees. So I agree with Karen. Kudos to you guys.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I do concur with Commissioner Andrews. It was just better to leave that out in dealing with the time that the employee puts in, and making sure that all of our records are correct. And I too want to thank the Civil Service Board. I mean, they did an excellent job, and under coming back on 3 separate times to go through this, once that I had the opportunity to meet with them, and they were unanimous in their decision on moving forward with these changes.
I'll open the floor for public comment at this time. Floor is closed. Any more discussion from the board?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-13 with the changes submitted by the Civil Service Commission on second reading and public hearing.
Second.
Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Mayor Black.
Yes. Next item is agreement with the University of Florida for planning services.
Linda's not here this evening, so we have, Jerry's going to come up and kind of address this agreement that we've talked about a couple times through the budget hearing process.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Madam Chair, for the record, Jerry Murphy, University of Florida. The agreement has been pending since Mr. Evans was here. I don't have much to say about it, other than I'm happy to answer any questions you may still have in this regard.
Jerry, I've got a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
And I'll have to plead ignorance because I wasn't part of this when it all got started and got kind of going here. Can you give me an example of what a city like ours, I don't want you to give away all your secrets because I know that's what you're getting paid for, so you don't have to go with all that with me. But what exactly can we charge for? I know, for example, the county charges for water, right? And the sewers are we sold those a while ago, so we can't charge a sewer fee. In my chats with the city manager, he mentioned maybe a fire department fee, right? City manager, is that what we're talking
Yes,
about?
that's
Okay.
correct. Sorry.
But outside of that, this is and you present yourself great. You seem like a good dude, but that's $100,000, and if we're not going to recoup that money, I don't know if I'm really being fiscally responsible by not asking the question. Can we get there? And I know Commissioner Douthert asked this question a little differently than I am asking it today. I want to be pretty sure that we're on the right path, that these impact fees are going to lead us down the right road. Is there any way of assuring me of that?
No, I can't ensure that for you at this time. What I can explain, though, is that the cost of doing the study and of establishing an impact fee ordinance, and it's something that you have to update on a regular basis because the statutes require, those are administrative costs, and the Florida statutes do allow for the recoupment of those administrative costs as part of the fee. So the cost that the city incurs in terms of establishing the fee and maintaining it over time can be rolled into the fee itself. What can you charge fees for? Parks and recreation expansion, street improvements, public facilities like what we're in now. As the population grows, as the intensity of development increases, those are additional impacts, and you need to establish levels of service in your comprehensive plan, which is one of the things that we'll be looking at. And those levels of service then run through the entirety of time. And as more people come in or more impacts are created, commercial development expands, then you assess that fee for the capacity enhancement to maintain that level of service as part of the impact fee. Did I answer that? Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I did pay close attention when you were explaining and had your meetings with the Budget Review Committee also, and paid a lot of attention to that. And the only area that I wanted to ask you about, Jerry, and I have a good feeling about it, I think that without doing it, we will be sorry 5 years down the road and 10 years down the road. And I think that had we done it 5 years ago, we would really be in, or 10 years ago, it would have been a great thing to have done. But I just want to look at your part of the contract on, it's Article 2, 2.2, under reports. And I think I had mentioned this before. I'm hoping, because we're all we're all very new at this, or at least I am, that you will be able to, under your reports and records, that you'll be able to provide us with a report, maybe every 2 weeks or once a month, recapping what you've accomplished so far in your study, because it's so new to us, okay? So I'd like to have a feeling about that, a benchmark.
Yeah, we can certainly coordinate that with the city manager. I don't want to inundate you with reports.
Exactly, and I'm seeing something very brief, okay? I'm not talking about an in-depth report at all, but something, the accomplishments that you've made toward the end, toward the end result. And what if the instance occurs, since you will be here, quite a bit and will be assisting in the community development department, okay? If there's any major interruptions that keep you from the project, which of course I hope to be the main thing, but if there's any big interruptions that you anticipate in the role of having to do something for the community development department, okay, that you will be able to tell us why you couldn't accomplish, okay, what you want to do. In other words, I want your time. I'm not trying to be a time task person or anything, but I think because the project is so new to us, I think it would be helpful, and it might not have to go on that long, but I think that as 2 weeks go by and a month and 6 weeks, I want to see what you might have worked on and what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes, we'll be happy to do that, and while the contract provides for quarterly reports, those will be more formal reports, maybe in the form of an email, but still a little more formal reports. I'll be in regular communication with Mr. Daniels, and I think that it would be appropriate for him to report to you, if I'm not perhaps at your meeting or on a regular basis, what our progress is. And we'll be communicating on a regular basis.
Okay, I'm sure you will be. And one other thing, in your absence, or should you not be able to fulfill your role, are we going to meet somebody who is your counterpart, who's, okay?
Yes.
Okay, that the city manager, okay, good, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
In regards to Mr. Preston's comments earlier, this is not meant to be punitive
No, sir. Can't be.
for the construction people, but it's meant to take some of the burden off the back of the taxpayers, the homeowners and the different businesses that pay taxes. This is correct, am I?
So the concept is that growth should pay for itself. And so new growth through an impact fee pays the proportionate share of the community providing the additional services necessary to accommodate that new development.
And that could be the rec department, like you said, the police department, the fire department, city hall.
What we decide or what you decide to charge for, that's going to be a policy decision that the board's going to have to make, and hopefully with a recommendation from the Planning Commission, who I presume will be the lead in terms of orchestrating the day-to-day development of this, making recommendations then to the Board of Commissioners for decisions.
Thank you.
We're going to try and explore as many opportunities as there are to collect impact fees, and then what you choose to adopt will be, a result of that conversation. And I wanted to make very clear, too, that part of the aspect is, one of your strategic plan goals is transparency with the public, and so we plan on incorporating quite a bit of public engagement. It's time-consuming, but I think it's very important, and we're hoping that the public will share with us the ideas that they have for what municipal services the city might provide moving forward to 2050.
Thank you.
Jerry, just one quick follow-up question. In any studies, do any of our neighbors employ impact fees? I mean, Treasure Island, the Reddingtons, are you familiar with that?
I haven't done all the research on that. That will be part of our research. I do know that I believe Indian Rocks Beach does an impact fee.
Okay.
I'm not going to comment on that fee, but I'm aware that they do. Pinellas County obviously charges a fee for mobility that I think encompasses the county roads and state roads. We'll be unraveling that to make sure what you're eligible to charge for as opposed to what the Pinellas County is already charging for.
Okay.
But yeah, and there are other communities in Pinellas County that do, and we'll try to have a full sort of review of who's doing what in that regard. I've just done sort of an initial inquiry into websites and what's available on the web, and some communities' websites are down because of the ADA issues, but there are communities that are charging impact fees. And
John, do you know, you chimed in there for a second, do you know more about that?
I've got a copy of the Indian Rocks one.
Okay,
So
all
I
right,
can
cool.
get you a copy.
Thank you.
of that.
Madam Mayor, if I might just make one comment. I'm kind of impressed with Mr. Murphy. Today he presented his action plan starting tomorrow with our staff, and he'll be at our follow-up staff meeting tomorrow that we have after every commission meeting. And he's got a game plan and he's ready to rock and roll. So I just find that very impressive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
3 public comment. Okay. The floor is open for public comment at this time. Floor is closed.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the proposal with authorization for the University of Florida Master Research Agreement, number ACR 000144483, to move forward.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Will City Clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes?
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Mayor Black.
Yes. Next item is Fantasy Planet Lease Agreement. Director Pierce?
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, the purpose of this agenda item is to present to the board a lease agreement extension with Fantasy Planet. This is per the board's direction received, that they received or gave to the former city manager, Jonathan Evans, at the July 1st workshop. And this lease is, the current one is expected to expire on September 30th, 2019. The interim city manager and myself have been meeting with the leasee, and we've had a lot of good communication. This extension will give the leasee the ability to make additional capital investments in the facility. There are no utility costs that we determined that is owed to the city, and this will allow, this short lease renewal term will allow the city time to consider any long-term options with respect to this property. As was in the information provided by the former city manager, Jonathan Evans, the fiscal impact called for an increase of 4% per year. So for the first year, it would, for FY 2020 in our budget, this would be $118,093.96 roughly. Staff recommends approval of this item.
Any discussion from the board?
Well, yeah, just one question. The page 411, number 8. I know we talked about it at the last one. I think you just mentioned it, but I didn't quite hear you. The utilities, so that backlash, not backlash, the owed utilities from 15 years or whatever we were talking about, did we find out that that wasn't actually their bill?
The interim city manager and I actually went around back and were able to find that meter in the back actually was for the lights on the parking.
For the lights, right?
Which
Yeah, okay.
are our responsibility. And furthermore, the water bill that we've been receiving every other month is for the restrooms, which are outside the facility, which is also our responsibility. So what the leasee is paying in electric and water is truly their obligation.
Right. Moshe, can you hop up here real quick?
And if I can add, he also pays to air condition the bathrooms that are our public bathrooms.
Right, right. But I mean, he'd mentioned that up here. You do pay a water bill, you do pay an electric bill. That's what you mentioned the last time. Okay, I was just, that backtracking was,
Right.
I knew
We
that wasn't
verified
gonna work,
everything
so.
too, so.
I'm good with that. Yep, cool. Good luck.
You know, I still don't believe we should be in the rental business. I believe that this should go up for sale. You know, why is the city in the rental business? I mean, I haven't been able to figure that out. Yeah, we might be making a few dollars, but that's not why we're in business, to be a landlord. That, you know, that money should be used to purchase green space for the city and for the residents and for the tourists, you know, not be a landlord. So, you know, I strongly disagree with any type of lease agreement. I think we need to move forward and get out of the rental business.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, just point of information, going back to just 2013-14, and I had my accounting manager run this for me, from 13-14 to the expiration of this lease, we would have received rent exceeding a little over $665,000 during that period.
But we're still in the rental business, and we should not be. The city is not a landlord.
I'm just throwing this out.
I know, I understand, Walt, you're talking about the dollars and cents, but I don't think we should be landlords and renting things. You know, if we do that, why not go open an apartment building and rent apartments? I mean, where do we stop? You know, I think this needs to go away.
Madam Mayor, here's the situation. We do have in here a 60-day clause for if we decide that we want to sell the building. Now, to sell the building, and the city attorney's here, he can correct me if I'm wrong, we have to first go out and get 3 separate independent appraisals of the site that we want to sell. Then we have to go to a referendum that needs to be held, and unless you're going to do a special election, we can either do it in November or do it in March, or you can do it any of the 5 years that we have the lease. You can decide that, you know, maybe you want to do this 2 years from now or whatever. The only thing I was looking at, to have this building sit vacant while we decide what we want to do when we can make income off of it, and I understand your point of view. I just, in all good conscience, though, we have a good tenant in there right now, and until we decide and actually go through all the steps, if that's what this commission decides to do in selling the building, then at that point, we give our tenant notice, and the only thing extra that we have in here is he has the first right of refusal. So if we're selling it and we go out and we do the bid process that you have to do to sell real estate, and this is assuming that the electorate has gone ahead and approved the fact that they want to sell the building, and then, you know, our tenant might be the one that purchases the building. He has an opportunity to match that highest price that we want to get for the, so I think it's a win-win. And it just means if that's what this board wants to do, we have to protect ourselves until that point, because the building's only going to deteriorate if you leave it vacant. And at least this gives us an opportunity to make that rent until we can transfer ownership if the board wants to do that. So that's kind of my thought process and bringing it forward to you.
Okay, thank you.
And I had lots and lots of thoughts about it, but I've known that we've had Marcia in there since 1998. And I had all the paperwork too, because I've been looking at it with Walt for probably 6 months, trying to figure out what happened in years past. But we have collected from July 1st, 98 through 12/31/18, $2,140,284.04. And we've really, I also had a problem with the city being in the real estate business, but I think for right now, with all the other projects that we have going on for the next 5 years, that we are well within our, well, I think that Marcia should have it for 5 years at least. I did want to make sure, and I know it's in here, but, you know, I'm such a stickler for these improvements in air conditioning, and I know that Marcia needs this lease agreement extension to be done so he can spend $30,000 on this air conditioning. But I wanted to make sure that under improvements in air conditioning, that I know Marcia always pays for all of the repairs within that property and has been for many years, but I want to make sure that if something happens when that air conditioning is being installed to a wall, to anything, that it doesn't come back to the city, because that's his improvement. Is that correct, Ralph? Are we well protected?
microphone's not on.
It does say
Page 1,
that. Yeah.
number 2, improvements, air conditioning. The lessee shall repair or replace at its own expense the air conditioning system and ducts on the premises as specified by the lessor. The lessee shall obtain all necessary licenses and permits to do such work on the air conditioning system. All other interior improvements shall be at the sole expense of the lessee, subject to the approval by lessor.
Okay, but see, it says interior improvements. What if for some reason, when that air conditioning gets installed, something happens on the outside of the building? I mean, I want to make sure that the city's not liable for any of that.
There's also Section 9, Ralph, under insurance, Section B,
yeah.
as far as the liability and property damage. I think that covers the city as well.
Okay, and I know it's the hold harmless too. So.
They're going to have $1 million policy.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm ready
And
to go
then-
for it.
Ralph, let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
My understanding is, if we signed a lease and we sell the building, that whoever purchased the building has got to agree to that lease. Because it goes with the building. Am I correct? I know if I buy a property and it has tenants in it and they have a lease, I've got to honor that lease.
No, that's different. Hold on one second, John, I'll find the
Okay.
section.
Do y'all remember when that, well, I don't think any of you do, but that building was purchased in 1987 for $650,000 from the old Board of Realtors.
Well, actually, I agree with both Commissioner Weinstein and Douthert that we shouldn't be in the rental business. But in the meantime, we have a
Well,
lease. and
that's why I was just asking Ralph that question. If we
Right.
sign a lease agreement and then a year from now, 6 months from now, we decided to put it up for sale, I think that whoever purchased it is required to live with that lease agreement until it runs out.
Uh, 24, successors and assigns, subject to the restrictions set forth in this lease. The terms of this lease shall be binding and inure to the benefit of the respective heirs, representative, successors, and assigns of the parties. So if we were going to sell, whoever would purchase first, the existing tenant would have right of first refusal and could buy it. If they refuse it, whoever does buy it would become the successor to the lessor. And then they would be able to collect the rents from the tenant.
Yeah, but guess what I was getting to was they can't kick them out. They've got to live up to that lease. Correct?
Well, that would be an assertion that the tenant would have to make. It wouldn't be between us, but most likely.
But I thought the law.
Typically, they would have to honor these lease agreements and terms. Sometimes they're renegotiated.
Okay.
But typically, the lessee would be protected if we were to sell it, and he did not exercise his right of first refusal, and another property owner came in, he would be able to lease at the same price, at least for these 5 years that are here. Subject to any of these termination provisions where a new owner or lessor might attempt to terminate for whatever allowable reasons are in here.
I'll open the floor for public comment.
That would be 16A, repossession, and then the reasons they could basically remove them would be in 15A through H.
You through, Ralph?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. John Hendricks, 569 Normandy Road, Madeira Beach. I can't believe we're talking about selling off city property. I've never seen anyone win monopoly by selling their property. What we need to be doing is generating revenue for this city. Our millage rate is going up substantially. And still, we've got commissioners that don't want anything going on in this town. That property has generated quite a bit of revenue for this city. How can you say you're not in the business to rent things out that you don't think the city should? You've got Archibald Park over there. You go to sell some of that stuff off. Alex Archibald's a friend of mine. He'll be on you quicker than an osprey on a mullet. So you need to quit talking about selling property off and start talking about how you can generate revenue for this city. You've got a marina down there that we have been promised for years a hydri was going in to generate revenue. Rather than talking about selling things off to where you've got a one-shot bunch of money in your hand, you need to think about the long term and start generating revenue for this city. So your thinking on this is totally upside down. If you're not moving this town forward rather than selling off what it's got, we're going to rust away. And we're not going to have the money to do our road improvements and our the other things that need to be done. What happened to burying the utilities? What happened to all that money that we got from pennies for Pinellas? I've asked this before. It stopped right after you folks were elected into office. And I'd like to know what happened to that. And I'd like us to think about generating revenue with the resources we've got instead of just selling off things and having nothing going on in this town.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Public comment is now closed. Any more discussion?
No, I make the motion to extend the lease agreement with Fantasy Planet for the period, wait a minute. For the period beginning 10/1/19 and ending 9/30/24 with a 4% annual increase.
I'll second.
Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Mayor Black.
Yes. The next item is the discussion of the city manager position. I would like to start this discussion off by saying that since Mr. Daniels has been here, it's been over a month now, he's stepped up to the plate and he's doing an excellent job as the interim city manager. And I had a conversation with him to see if he'd be interested in staying on and being our permanent city manager, and he said he would be willing to do that. Of course, that would be based on satisfactory negotiations of his contract. However, he said he is willing to accept the current salary as is. But since his son is a senior in high school, the family would not be able to move here for about a year. So he would like to get perhaps some additional housing allowance. And based on that, I would recommend that we rescind the offer to the city manager, to Mr. Drum, and offer the permanent position to Mr. Daniels based on, I said, a satisfactory negotiations of his salary.
Madam Mayor, I have to kind of agree with you, and I think one of the things I liked about Mr. Daniels is that even though when we brought him in, it was short-term, he's been not acting like it's short-term. He's been acting like it's long-term, and even if he had to go, he was still helping the city for the long-term, not the short-term. So I agree with what you're saying there, and with withdrawing the offer to Mr. Drum, I think, in just my opinion, Commissioner Andrews and Commissioner Hodges both did not want Mr. Drum to start with. So I don't know how they feel on this, but I kind of agree with you. Thank you.
Well, I feel like you hit the ground running when you came in, and you're still going at it. You've been involved in the Big C, Pennies for Pinellas. We've talked about Rotary Club. We've done the chambers, and also you've continued with the coffee with the manager. We might change it to breakfast with Bob, in the future. But
Bob Evans.
you've made this your home in the last 5 weeks, and I think you kind of like us. We're not so bad. But yes, I would really like to consider you staying on as our city manager.
I'll make a couple comments too as well. I studied Bob Daniels' background information that we received, all the different things that he has done in his career, and I also studied certainly Mr. Drum's, who has also a very, very good record. I also looked at how the interaction with the employees has been since Bob Daniels has been here, and I'm very satisfied with that. I think that upon looking at all of the, I must make this comment, but I think that in looking at all of the, not the 36 original people that we looked at before we even had an interim or back down to 6, I found one thing consistent, and I really hope that certainly Mr. Daniels will prove to be the one that this doesn't happen to, and that's that I know that you've come into lots of scenarios in our city since you've been here in 5 weeks, and I think that the most important thing to me is good customer service. We've got to show our business people, our citizens, our employees that we're accountable. And I do think that your ethics are very high. I think that I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that you'll do the right thing by the city, but I really want the commitment to be forthcoming, that you'll follow up on everything. That's where I come from. So, but I think
I don't know what you're all talking about. I don't like the guy. Gosh. Hey, you know what? I agree. It's tough to make this panel all agree on something. So, but I echo all the commissioners' comments at this point. I mean, I think what we've seen is we've seen some leadership here in City Hall, and I forgot who said it just recently, but I don't think Bob ever really took on this position as a temporary position. He came in guns a-blazing, and everything's answered. I mean, you bring something to him, and everything's answered, and it's straightforward. And he's, even when you're sitting in a meeting with him, he's interrogating you like the cop that he is. But it's all really. I mean, I'm thrilled, honestly. So, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to rescind our offer to Mr. Drum and to start contract negotiations with Mr. Daniels immediately.
I'll second that. Upon satisfactory contract negotiations, right?
Floor is open for public comment.
Doreen Moore, 13019 Boca Avenue. And as a resident, and you've heard me preaching about being on the various commissions and committees and things that you've had resident involvement in, I'd just like to say that I think that Mr. Daniels has done a wonderful job in terms of bridging a lot of issues, dealing with a lot of personalities, and has done a wonderful job of bringing people together by listening to their ideas and, getting back, following up, doing the research, getting the answers. And having been to several of these meetings recently in terms of the commission, I think he's also bridged a very large gap amongst our commissioners by drawing consensus and maybe quelling some of the contentiousness that was here before. So I just would say kudos to Mr. Daniels in bringing the team together and having the support of the staff behind him. So I'm very, very pleased with your decision. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Public comment is now closed. Any more discussion from the board? Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Mayor Black.
Yes. Welcome, City Manager.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the applause, but it's really teamwork, the staff, the commission, the residents. You all have been open to that communication, and we still have a lot more bridges to go to, and you know, we're going to have challenges that come up. But the key thing is we all work on those together, because if we start splintering and start bickering, and I'm just talking about my staff when I say this, and they've really pulled themselves together, and they're moving forward as well. We're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, but I think if we all work together, it's amazing what you can do when you're unified, and that's really the message that I've been preaching and not working in the past, and let's move forward and take this city to the next level.
Congratulations again. And I do apologize to Mr. Drum for any inconvenience that we may have put him through during this discussion and decision. And we thank him for coming to our fair city and applying. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2019-13, Adoption of Legislative Priorities. City Manager
Yes.
or City Clerk.
Resolution 2019-13, a resolution of the City of Madeira Beach, Pinellas County, Florida, adopting top legislative priorities for fiscal year 2019 state legislative session.
Very good. Thank you. I don't think any of these are a surprise to the commission, because these are basically, I put in what we had looked at trying to obtain last year. And unfortunately, because the way the legislature went last year and the crisis and the tragedy that we had in Parkland, Florida, a lot of the focus, rightfully so, went towards the safety and security of our children. They're our biggest asset. So with that moving through the legislature, this year there's a lot of initiatives and that they're looking at funding. And the first issue basically is our beach groins that I had suggested to as a priority. And these are my suggestions to you. Granted, I'm copying them really from last year, but I think they're still very important. One thing I did find out is that some of our coastal neighbors might be looking for a similar project. So in our meeting with the lobbyists this last week, we met with them last Friday, that's an important issue as well. And then obviously our expenditures for our infrastructure situations. And just to give you an idea, we could probably hopefully get funding for $1 million to $1.5 million that'll go towards our infrastructure and our stormwater projects. So those are really the two big keys. And then, obviously we're still trying to work locally with the county on our light situation. And I think I've got them all. Did I miss one?
Home rule.
I'm sorry, home rule. Yeah, home rule is obviously something that just as an example kind of snuck up and caught us unbeknownst that the governor signed a bill which basically took away the rights of our local municipalities and counties to regulate landscaping. If you cut down a tree, not regulating landscaping itself, but the tree cutting measures. And on the news just the other day, you know, we saw them tearing out all these beautiful live oaks out of a trailer park that they're doing to some construction. And, you know, basically they took your power as a commission and said that that's not important, and, you know, you can no longer enforce the tree cutting rules, tree disposal rules. So it's things like that that are going to crop up, and, you know, constantly we're going to have issues involving the dilution of the home rule powers, and obviously that's something we want to make sure is addressed through our lobbyists as well.
Thank you. Floor is open for public comment. Floor is now closed.
I make a motion to pass Resolution 2019-13 as written.
If you like all the whereas clauses, we'll move the whereases to also underneath where it says be it resolved. So if those all meet your requirements.
You want me to read all that?
No, you don't have to read it. I'm just saying we're going to take them and we'll put them in there.
Okay.
Though if you're in agreement with all the whereas as being your legislative priorities. We'll add
Okay,
those.
I make.
And then we'll add also this home rule one that the Commissioner Douthat likes.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-13 with whatever Ralph just said.
I'll second.
Any more discussion from the commission? Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat?
Yes.
Commissioner Weinstein?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges?
Yes.
Mayor Black?
Yes. Next item is Resolution 2019-14. City Manager?
Yes. Resolution 2019-14, a resolution of the City of Madeira Beach appointing interim city manager Robert Daniels to serve as the staff appointee to the Penny for Pinellas 4 Joint Review Committee on behalf of the City of Madeira Beach and the entities represented by C11, and providing for an effective date.
Madam Mayor, this position was one that Mr. Evans held when he was here, and he sat on this committee basically as a representative not only of the city of Madeira Beach, but also of the Big C coastal communities, and kind of putting the cart before the horse. The Big C had their meeting ahead of time, and nobody really stood up to volunteer. So since I'm all for promoting Madeira Beach, I spoke up, and you know what happens when you speak up. So this is kind of your endorsement of allowing me to represent us and the Big C communities at that committee. They're probably only going to run through October because they're winding down on their recommendations that they're going to make to the county commission.
Thank you. Any discussion from the board? No? Public comment is now open. Public comment is now closed. Will the city clerk, oh, yes.
Make a motion.
Oh, yes, we need a motion.
Yeah, motion and a second.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-14, approving City Manager Robert Daniels to the Pinellas County Penny for Pinellas 4 Joint Review Committee on Economic Development.
I'll second.
Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Weinstein?
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges?
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Black?
Yes. Next item is ordinance 2019-17. City clerk?
Ordinance number 2019-17, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 110, zoning, Article 6, supplementary district regulations, Division 3, walls, fences, hedges, and sand fences, Section 110-447, rear yards facing water to clarify residential rear yards facing water height, providing for severability, providing for the recognition of state preemption, and providing for an effective date.
So the Code of Ordinances as written right now does not provide for fences in residential rear yards on the water. This issue is due to a modification at the second hearing of Ordinance 2018-02 fence ordinance modification. The first hearing for ordinance 2018-02 fence ordinance modification was on March 7th, 2018. The amendment included residential properties that abut a park or commercial land use, commercial safety fencing, and the setback line for the 6-foot-high fence on water-facing rear properties. And the motion carried 4-1. At the BOC second hearing for ordinance 2018-02, the word commercial was added in the first sentences to section 110-447A and B. After the addition of the word commercial in the ordinance, the code now only addresses commercial rear yards on the water because section 110-447 is the only section in the code that addresses fences in rear yards facing the water. So the inclusion of commercial in the second reading had the unintended effect of removing regulations for residential lots. We are now requesting an amendment to remove the word commercial at the beginning of section 110-447A and B so that the section refers to both commercial and residential fences.
Could you explain what the requirement will be then in terms of the height and the types of fences that would be allowed in residential now as well as commercial?
So it will go back to what it was before. Any fence in the rear yard can either be 3-foot solid, that also goes for hedges and garden walls, and 4-foot-high open fences, and that's like a picket fence or a chain link fence.
The back of the house to the seawall or water?
That's the rear yard, yes.
Yes, I have some comments on this. I think that this needs to be postponed, or it needs to go back to the planning, the community development, until we can get some historical data, because there's something squirrely about this. And I don't really like it. I find the identifying the word commercial as being indicating will correct a Scrivener's error, and I'm very uncomfortable with that. I don't know that that's really what the particular ordinance meant.
Going back on the April 10th minutes, they didn't have commercial in there. I think you were the one that raised the fact that you weren't comfortable with it in residential. Linda Portal had said we have some commercial projects that need to go forward. So you all agreed to adopt this for the commercial and come back at some point and think about residential. So the policy question before you is, what do you want for a height of a fence in a residential backyard? This would be 3 feet opaque and 4 feet open or see-through fence.
Well, I don't know, something about it. I did get some information, and I guess it was sent to all the commissioners, the mayor. I don't see.
You may want to take public comment today and see how that goes and then discuss.
That would be fine, but I would like to.
And you'll learn some more from the public about what their issues are with this.
You know, also,
Should I give this, I'm sorry, excuse me just a second, John.
I asked once before that anytime the planning commission approves something, that they're here to explain why they approve it. And the planning commission approved this, and, you know, why are they not here to explain to us what their reasoning was to approve it? So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, well, yes, I know that was my first meeting last year. But what I really would like to see is what happened prior to ordinance 2018-02, which was done last year. Because there's historical data somewhere in there, I believe, because it does refer to this ordinance 2018-02 as being an amendment. So obviously there was something before that. And the reason I suggest the holding off on this matter is that I did get information, which I'll be happy to give to the city clerk to pass out, although everybody did get it, from an individual who remembers going back to 1994 on that original ordinance. So I'm just asking for time for it to be looked into to see exactly, I guess exactly what it means. I don't understand it.
If you can give that to the planning department as well as the clerk, and then I don't know if that person is here, but if they could come up during public comment also, that would be fine.
And I made a copy of
You're not on the mic.
I did make a copy of 2018-02. That was from last year, and that was not with the packet tonight, so.
This way, the clerk can make sure it's part of the public record too, so I appreciate you bringing that forward.
No, can I have a copy of that? Okay, cool. Whatever, afterwards, fine, as long as I get it back tonight. Thank you.
The floor is now open for public comment.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Howell, 497 Johns Pass Avenue, excuse me. Since moving to Madeira Beach in 2014, we have had numerous interactions with Madeira Beach City Hall regarding this exact ordinance. We fully support the need to rewrite the ordinance so that it is complete, clear, not contradictory, detailed enough to allow residents to implement the ordinance, and detailed enough to allow enforcement of the ordinance. The proposed change of just a single word in the ordinance is insufficient to make this an unambiguous enforceable ordinance. Time limitations will not allow me to make a complete illustration of all of the issues with this ordinance. Let me begin to outline some of the most obvious issues, and given my time limitations, I'm only going to address the first sentence of the whole ordinance. Firstly, the rear building setback is not defined. Is the rear building setback the wall of the building closest to the water, or is it the roof overhang closest to the water? Those distances can vary by 2 to 3 feet. Seawall is not an adequate description of a measuring point. Seawall caps are now being built that are up to 32 inches deep going into the bay, which makes a significant difference where the measuring point is. At meetings with the building department, we have been told seawall means from the water side of the seawall. We've also had the exact same building department officials say it is the farthest point of the seawall cap. Clearly, this isn't unambiguous or enforceable without further definition, and currently isn't being applied consistently throughout Madeira Beach. The next part of sentence 1 states, garden walls, solid fences, and hedges shall not exceed 3 feet in height. Literally interpreted, nobody is allowed to have a hedge anywhere in their backyard taller than 3 feet in height, including foundation plantings on the rear of the building. Is this truly the intention of what we want in this town? If so, I'd love to explain what people have against foundation plants. If not, it needs to be rewritten. From where are the measurements taken on the height of the fence? Defining the point of measurement for the height is necessary to make this ordinance unambiguous and enforceable. A code enforcement officer recently told my husband and I that because the height of the ground varies on a property, the height of a fence can vary as well, making fence height restrictions unenforceable. We were told that. I could similarly go on with other parts of this ordinance beyond the first sentence, but I believe I have highlighted enough of the significant issues. We can do better, and we must do better. We're owed that. I didn't plan to spend my retirement reading code.
Robert Preston, 425 South Bayshore Drive, Madeira Beach. Just on the face of this, I have a couple questions. What happens to people that have had, let's say, a block wall up for the last 30 years? What happens to those people that, where that block wall is 5 foot or 6 foot or whatever the case may be, and it extends past the back of their structure. I'm not sure if it's structure or a measured distance. So you could have a setback of one house that is 30 feet from the seawall, and that person starts, his 4-foot fence starts at that point. But you could have the person next door where his structure is 50 some odd feet back, and his starts back there. So how does that relationship work when you have different setbacks from different houses? Right? I mean, can you understand what I'm getting at? It just doesn't, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think this ordinance needs to go back because you have existing that are on foundations that have been there for 25 or 30 years. You have different setbacks on houses from the seawall. You have different structures from the seawall. It could be a porch, it could be a piling, it could be something else. And what are you calling the structure of the building? Is it where the whole foundation of the building is, or is it where the pilings go out that holds up the porch above? I mean, I think there's a lot of questions to this ordinance that really needs to be resolved and really looked at before you go any further. I think this ordinance takes a lot of work. But I think there's also some Pinellas County intercoastal rules as far as fencing and seawalls and stuff like that. Is that not true?
I would have to do some research to double check.
So I think there's also some of those things that take effect when you live on the water. There's certain distances. So this ordinance needs a whole lot of work before you go any further. Thank you.
William Howell, 497 Johns Pass Avenue. And the gentleman who just spoke, who I've never met, asked some very good questions. Questions that I have sat in this building across the table from Mr. DeSantis and other members of the building department. I've asked those questions, and they have been unable to answer them. Simple questions like this seawall, where do you measure it from? In one meeting, you get different answers. I ask, would you come back to me in the future with a clear answer? No, they're unable to do this. I have spent too much time of my life in this building over the last 5 months trying to get this particular ordinance sorted out. Further, I'd like to highlight, I was cited in violation of this ordinance, the one that doesn't exist. I was cited by the Deputy of Code Enforcement for the ordinance that is not in effect, the one that you all replaced 15 months ago. So we have a real issue here where nobody knows what ordinances exist, what is in effect, what's not in effect. I walked into Mr. Pinkard's office and I said, can you find this ordinance for me? He wasn't able to. He finally dug it up and said, gosh, the word commercial's in here. Where did that come from? He's our code officer, and he wasn't familiar with this. And please, when you go back to redo this, which I have to believe you'll do, take up the pool fence ordinance at the same time, because those two ordinances are not in harmony with one another. You've got to harmonize those ordinances so that there's anybody's chance. Since April, I have had an outstanding question to the building department. Given that my fence was damaged by my neighbor's contractor, what do I need to do to make that fence now legal? Simple question, asked in April. It's now August, and I still don't have an answer from the building department as to what I need to do to make that fence legal. That's just unacceptable. No wonder why we have so many code violations in this town. And the setback topic that this gentleman spoke about, I mean, is just sinful. My neighbor pushed his seawall out by 18 inches. And he did a dance in my yard that he picked up 18 inches of land without paying any taxes on it and without paying any money for it. And now he has a new setback. So his whole entire house can move out 18 inches further to the sea than mine. Well, I'm thinking about proposing that I put a seawall 4 feet out. I mean, where does this game end, gentlemen and ladies? Please, don't pass this thing. Send this back and get it reworked. Thank you.
John Hendricks, 569 Normandy Road. I do have a couple of, well, they're questions, but I know I can't ask y'all questions. That is, as I understand, trees are exempt from this hedge part of this whatever this is. Ordinance, yeah, thank you. My age got me. Also, there are many people that they have a pool or something, they want a privacy fence in their backyard, and I understand that. I would hope we can be able to, if your neighbors sign off on it, get a variance to where they can put up a privacy fence if they want to. There are a number of locations in the city where the people's house border a road. For instance, Island Drive at the bridge, there are 4 houses on that corner, 2 of which or 3 of which have pools, but they can't continue their fence on back, their privacy fence. So whenever you drive across that bridge, you're looking into these people's backyards. They should be able to get a variance so they can put those fences up and have some privacy in their own backyards. And it's been kind of carved in stone in the past that they couldn't do it because the ordinance didn't address particular scenarios like that. So it does need to go back, and I'd like to see it to where you can get sign off from your neighbors and be able to have a privacy fence. You're not blocking anybody's view, really. Your view really is out in front of you. If I look to my left or to my right, I see nothing but docks and boat lifts with boats on them, or big boats anyhow. So might be a good thing to think about on the fences in the backyard. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Public comment is now closed.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I think I get the message that we probably need to do a better job on this ordinance, and I would like to, after just getting some feedback on the height of what this commission is looking for by way of height, I'd like to pull it and let us go back and retool the ordinance, do a complete review of it, and taking the comments that were mentioned here today and your comments, just so we have some direction. And I want to make sure whatever we pass, we do it the right way and we take in everything into account.
Can we invite can we throw this on the workshop? This next one coming up, we allowed to do that?
Sure.
We're good?
Well,
Okay.
I think because it's brought up today, if it's something you want to do, I think we have room in the workshop. It's not that long, so.
Yeah, right.
We got about 20 items on the
Right.
workshop
Yeah,
meeting.
it went from 2 to 20 all of a sudden. But no, I'd like a member of the planning commission, at least one, to come and talk about this, because the passion that I heard from our residents, and I got to be honest with you, I read it 8 times, had no idea. And then when Mrs. Howell stood up here, she confirmed the fact that I had no idea what this was, because it's all over the place. But it definitely needs to be reworked. So I'd suggest that we throw it onto the workshop and move on to the next thing.
You could also send it back to the planning commission if that's something you wanted to do and have.
Well, let's talk about it first, because then we can send it back to them once we can figure out why they wanted to approve it the way it is. I'm completely lost on it, so.
Well, I'm sorry, if I can just add, my preference is I want staff to get it right first, and instead of just throwing it up and lobbing it up to them just like I don't like to lob things up to the commission. I want to make sure that we address all those concerns and come up with a staff recommendation that makes sense to them, and then later on to you. I apologize, Commissioner.
That's fine. I would just like to suggest that if some research can be done and we can locate the data, the history of it from 1994, I mean, it should be in an archive somewhere, then let's see what we did since then to make it this confusing.
So what you're saying was we should table it?
I'd like to table it, and what I did ask is our city attorney, since he represents other jurisdictions, if he has some examples that we can take a look at as well, and some of my experiences in different jurisdictions. So I think we can do a better job of answering everybody's questions and being more specific in our definitions and how we're going to go ahead and accomplish this and make it enforceable. There's no sense having ambiguity. I'm sorry, I can't do it for the life of me today.
Ambiguity.
I need more water. Sorry, but and knowing that, you know, to bring it to you to pass it and consider it even, I think we need to take a better shot at this.
Do we need a vote to table then?
I think if you just take my recommendation to pull it, is that
good enough?
Yeah, but I don't know that we have a date, time certain, so we'll just continue the first reading to another first reading.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for advertising's sake, if we
We'll
continue to the next meeting.
re-advertise it again so everyone is aware. You want to do the next meeting? You think you'll have time to do it for the next regular meeting?
I think so, but I'm looking at Clara.
This one is not advertised on the first reading, so there
Oh,
hasn't-
okay.
no.
So we're okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll
We
put
don't
it on
have
an
to
agenda
advertise
notice at
again
least
yet.
so everybody knows when it's coming up.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure everybody that spoke here tonight even is aware of it.
I think that's a great idea, because we definitely need to rework this one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is ordinance 2019-18.
Yes.
City Clerk?
Ordinance number 2019-18, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending land development regulations, Division 5, C-1, Tourist Commercial, Section 110-259, Special Exception Uses to allow parking facilities as a principal use, providing for severability, providing for the recognition of state preemption, and providing for an effective date.
So Director Portal brought this item to the BOC at a workshop in May, so you might remember this, regarding the parking in Johns Pass Village. This item stems from issues with standalone parking in the village. Standalone parking as a principal use is not allowed in any zoning district. Parking lots are only allowed as an accessory use to a structure. This means that a majority of the parking lots in the village are of an illegal use. And we currently do not have the means to make these private parking lots legal at this time. These lots were never approved through site plan review and currently violate the zoning codes. This amendment proposes to allow parking as a principal use only in Johns Pass Village in the C1 Tourist Commercial Zone as a special exception. Special exception uses must meet the special exception standards and go before the Planning Commission for a recommendation, and then the special magistrate for approval.
Any discussion?
Well, yes, a little bit, because after probably 15 or 20 years of seeing this going on, I'm delighted that we're addressing it. I think it was an excellent project to be involved in, because all private lots are illegal for parking, and that's just the bottom of it. So I certainly recommend, and I like the ordinance 2019-18. I did have a question for you, Jenny, and it's, what it is, yes. On that ordinance, I guess the word under section 110-259 on the actual thing, upon application for a special exception to the Board of Adjustment. It's not the Board of Adjustment, right? Or does it have to stay that way for a reason?
It should actually be the special magistrate, because the Board of Adjustment went away and the special magistrate replaced the Board of Adjustment. So that should be special magistrate.
Okay, so you can change that. Then, if some of the lots that we had referred to and that we had discussed in such detail are R2 and not C1, what are we going to do with those R2 lots? Because they've obviously been getting business licenses for years and years and years, and they weren't even a legal business.
Are you talking about the lots on Pelican? Is that right?
Specifically,
So
right?
Those are actually R3. So this proposed amendment is only in C1, so those would not be allowed. Those actually don't have any current business licenses right now, so those would be illegal use, so the parking lots on Pelican.
Okay, and I know that possibly could, pose a hardship, but they've been getting away with it for so long, or, I hate to use the word getting away with it, but they have, that it has to be rectified. Something has to be done to it.
Correct.
So what you're saying is that there will be no parking on those two Florida parking lots on Pelican?
Those lots on Pelican and the R3, yeah, those would be illegal and they wouldn't be allowed.
Okay, and then will the city then identify other private parking lots? Will there be a way to identify the private parking lots either through code enforcement or community development so that it's done uniformly throughout the city? In other words, I was just questioning a private lot it's on Gulf Boulevard, and it's across from Schooners, and I was thinking that's an R3.
That would be an R3.
Okay, so that's not, I was thinking it was commercial at first, but there's so many of them that we don't know, so I'm asking, I guess, how
So
would
that
we
would not
identify
be
them?
allowed. I'm not sure of the parking lot that you're referring to. Linda might have talked to you about this before, but yeah.
Okay, 'cause there is
Standalone parking lots are not allowed. If it's a parking lot for an accessory use, for another structure, then that's allowed.
But that would be a lot adjacent to the structure, would that be? Okay,
Yeah,
so an
so if
independent lot.
If it's an independent principal use lot, then that's not allowed. That's illegal.
Okay.
And currently, we have nothing in the zoning code that allows that. So this is the only place that would allow it if this is passed.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Weinstein, are you referring to the lot directly across the street from the schooner? Because that's got to be commercial. It's right on Gulf Boulevard, so they can use that for commercial use. Or you're talking the one that's in back of it?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, the front part of the lot, well, I went through this because I used to park cars next to my store on that piece of property there. I was allowed to do it on the front part of the lot, but not on the back part of the lot because it was zoned differently. But I think anything that runs along Gulf Boulevard is, and I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive anything that runs along Gulf Boulevard is zoned that it can be used for commercial use. Somebody else can.
We'll determine that with the city, right? Thank you.
Floor is open for public comment.
I just have a question about the parking lots that are on the end of Pelican there. Are they creating a hazard, or is it something that they could get a special use for, like seafood festival or something like that? I don't know if it's, is there complaints? I'm just wondering if it's been happening for years and years. I just wondered where this is at. I'm just kind of curious. Does anybody know?
I think the issue is it was allowed, and they never really had the proper zoning to do it under the code. So I'm sure they can come in and make application for some type of either a zoning change. I'm not sure of a variance to that particular zoning would be appropriate, but obviously we'd look at that and see what we could do to, if that's their intention.
Right. Just kind of curious. Just You know, I'm looking at if it's been going on for a long time and there really isn't any complaints, and it's because it's written in a code, is there any way we can work with the people so we can make it a manageable situation where it makes all parties happy? It's the only thing that I'm thinking about.
We have heard some complaints to adjacent properties from those lots on Pelican.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Public comment is now closed. Any more discussion from the commission?
Yes, I move to adopt ordinance 2019-18, amending land development regulations, Division 5, et cetera, the rest of it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Mayor Black.
Yes. Next, we have staff reports, and the first one is the quarterly finance report for the first and second quarter. Director Pierce.
Madam Mayor, if I may, Jenny has done an outstanding job for the city. Her tenure with us will be ending on Friday. She has a commitment to the Peace Corps, which I find very commendable. It's like one of her bucket list items that she's wanted to do. So I just want to give her a round of applause. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. Good luck.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, the purpose of, and I will cover B first on the agenda item for staff reports, just a budget update and to provide some information to the board based on the previous budget workshop we had. And I tried to condense this to provide budget information for the board as we go forward. Some of this includes information that the city managers had with you and interactions just recently, and I've tried to summarize it. First of all, at the last meeting, Commissioner Andrews had a question about the fireworks and the exact cost, and that's the first handout, the one page that I gave you, which does show that we made two payments that total $30,000, just for your information, because it was requested. And the other sheet that I've given you is basically just another snapshot of changes. And I went over this with the Budget Committee yesterday, as early as yesterday, and just providing this to you now, just as a summation by fund of some of the increases, decreases that we've experienced so far. And going into next week, if you have any questions, and you can take this and digest it, any questions, you can address them to the city manager and myself. But going forward, I'm going to be closing out tentative budget next week and hope to get it to the printers and to get you that document on the 27th. So that's my goal and that's my plan. So this is what it looks like. Since the proposed budget, a lot of this has already been covered. On the first page, I just go over on the general fund, which is 1, 2, and 3 are just roughly increases to revenue. Thought that the interest of earnings that we're getting from the bank warranted increasing that to $30,000. on the interest that we would get from interest earnings. So that would go from 100,000 to 130,000. Down below, 4 through 8, 4 through 7 are just repeats of what the Budget Committee and the Board has already discussed. Number 8 is Mr. Jerry Murphy, and one of the things that we attach to the document you receive is a breakdown of the, Commissioner Andrews actually wanted us to try to come up with the 100,000, and we took a stab at it, and that's actually the second page, which lists the 100,000 to Mr. Murphy. And number one, while we want to and consider the Military Court of Honor very seriously and try to pursue that, we feel that we might need more time to generate sponsorship and interest. So we're not recommending doing away with it, but just tabling it. And that would be 38,000. We've only spent 2,000 so far in the survey, which Al Carrier did, and he's actually at a stopping point. Decrease in budget allocation for fireworks. The city manager indicated that it's his desire basically to reduce this by 26,000, leaving a balance of 10,000 with the burden on staff and himself to try to get the money through sponsorship. Number 3 is a decrease in signs and signals. This is actually something that, on more discussion with the public work folks, we found out that we're only responsible for one signal and that we can reduce that by 15,000. And then the other 21,000 is coming from the special magistrate, which we feel like is significantly under budget this year, and that we would have more enough in the allocation for next year to cover that. So again, we took a stab at coming up to the 79,000, or I'm sorry, the 100,000 that we were looking at for paying Mr. Murphy. On the next couple of pages, again, some of the significant things, and I'll just highlight those. We're looking at a permanent public works director, which was posted. City manager indicated that that's a priority of his, and that position would have a more burden salary-wise on the public works department, because the percentage that would be charged to the marina, which this person would not be responsible for, there'd be more of an obligation to the Public Works Department from a staffing standpoint. We reduced the fire department by 25,000 because we had 25,000 in there to replace the AC unit. We're actually doing that this year, and if there are any other costs that the fire department has, we have sufficient funds in the non-departmental budget to handle any other projects or capital improvements that arise over there, and we've already talked to the fire chief about that. Parking, you saw a presentation by Brian Rao at the last meeting that replacing the windows on the machines for $50,000, all those windows can be replaced with a touch-tone screen, anti-glare, and actually add life to the existing machines. Going into the lost fund, the board actually gave direction to increase the expenditures by 100,000, making it 300,000 for improved beach access, parking lot improvement, and signage. Archibald Fund, basically that's a correction to staffing and a rounding allocation. Building Fund, basically where we had an error in calculation of the salaries that were attributed there, and that's an increase to that fund of 17,000, which that fund can absorb. Sanitation, again, just a little correction there, because if we hire a public works director, that's a little bit of an increase that would be to that fund. Also, the same instance to the, well, not to the stormwater. On the stormwater, number 22, we're allocating Area 1 for Crystal Island. This will be a good chunk that will be started with Al Carrier's help next year. So we're budgeting 7.88 million. Not that that all will be done, but when we allocate it, if it does not get done, bless you, that money will roll over. And also the interest is also posted there as well. So there's also a matching expenditure for that same amount, that's 7.88 million. So the stormwater fund balances, and also the marina fund, the city manager indicated putting more of a professional there, and he's indicated that, I believe, in some of your discussions. And even with putting a professional manager there at $75,000, the fund would still be revenues and over expenditures by over $100,000 or $105,000, which is very conservative. So just wanted to give you a breakdown of where we stand right now, and if there's anything going forward that the board has heartburn on, we still have time to discuss some of these either through myself and or with the city manager. But going forward, it is imperative time-wise so that we have enough time to meet trim guidelines and some of the other state statutes per the budget, that basically this tentative budget is finalized next Wednesday, so that we have sufficient time to get you the budget book on or by the 27th. Now, you still will have an opportunity to make changes. And you will still have, even when you receive that tentative budget book, you will still have opportunity to make any changes that you want. And so going into the first reading, not that it's common, but you would have the opportunity to make changes. And we have a representative from the Budget Review Committee. If you want any questions to ask, how they viewed this document and where they stand. I know there was appreciation from with the Civil Service Committee. I would like to thank the Budget Review Committee because they have really helped me. We had good dialogue, and if it wasn't for them, sometimes a director of finance sees committees like that as a hindrance or just a time constraint, but I truly valued them, and they gave direction and good input along the way. So I'm deeply appreciated for them.
Okay, Walt, I had the question asked of me again today. Will you be able to put in the budget book at the library for those that want to see it?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to reiterate that the Budget Committee, that's really a lot of work they've done, and I think we all appreciate it.
Yes, definitely.
So thank you.
Madam Mayor, one other item I just would like to provide for information purposes for the board, and I've been admittedly a little tardy about this. We have a responsibility as far as our investment policy to provide an investment update to the board quarterly. And while I wanted to report earlier the different quarters, and I've given you 3 quarters here, the market and the rates for interest rates this year have been just so volatile that providing one report to you for 1 quarter, I kept pushing it off because as I completed one of these reports for like December, I was finding that the rates were changing as I was completing these reports. The June is a good report, but just to highlight to you what I'm talking about, we did renew a 3-year banking agreement with Hancock Bank. The interest rate that we were earning for the last 3 years was 0.70. When we renewed that agreement, that interest rate went up to 2.43%. And that's why in the budget, I'm able to increase the interest expense that we're going to receive from $100,000 to $130,000. The 2018 actual was like $65,000. That's how much interest that is out there and that we're able to get. Also, Bank United, they started off the first quarter 0.70 as far as a yield, and the June report shows now that through negotiations with them, we have that up to 2.10. And we're doing very well in the market, the money market at Seaside. The only bank that really we're disappointed on, and we're looking at making a change, is with, which used to be Florida Community Bank. They recently changed to Synovus Bank in the last month or two, and we thought when they changed, we could get them to increase that interest. But we're seeing that they're not budging, so we're possibly thinking of making a move there and switching those funds to another bank. Also, lastly, we did, which is not reflected in the June report, but we did receive the $15,063,000 deposited into our Florida Palm account. That's the $15 million loan for the stormwater capital improvements, and that is earning 2.40%, and that will be reflected in the September report. So this is just information for you. Again, a little tardy in getting this information to you, but again, the market has just been so volatile with interest rates, and very happily going up instead of stabilizing or going down.
Was that A and B? Okay, just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything additional. Last thing on the agenda is reports and correspondence. Any reports from the City Commission?
Yeah, I just want to comment that I did go to the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council meeting yesterday morning, and there were two good presentations. One was the electric vehicles, and I brought this information back. I'll give it to Clara, and she can, that's okay, Clara, and you can distribute it to the commission. And the other presentation was on yet another way on what Tampa Bay has to do with their transportation system. So, and that seems to be an ongoing thing. They just always like to discuss that. But once again, it was a interesting meeting, and I'll continue bringing back whatever I can.
Did you say one of them was the electric charging stations?
Not electric charging stations, electric vehicles.
Okay.
Anybody else? City Attorney?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Or Commissioner. So used to sing in front of a judge.
I do have a gavel, but.
Here comes the bill.
City Manager?
I have a couple things, and I appreciate your patience with this. Probably one of the most pressing things, and you'll probably see a document that maybe got confused with the network people contract and, all the other paperwork, but unfortunately, since I arrived, 5 weeks ago, we've been, and I guess prior to that, we've been having problems with our server here in the building. Our computers will lock up systematically during certain periods of the day. They've tried problem solving. They've even gotten Microsoft to try to look at where the conflict. But as I suspected from the beginning, the symptoms were very similar to when we start to lose a server. And we have 2 servers currently, and this particular server is in the 4 to 5 year range. Usually after 5 years, you need to be looking for replacing them. It's a little early in my thought process, but the bottom line is we live and die by the data and the workloads and the computer systems, and it is that important to our process to make sure that everything gets done. So it really is an emergency. If this goes down, then we're down to 1 server, and it can't handle the capacity of everything we have. But what I would like to do, and I have this memo that I did explaining this, and hopefully it was on each of your places. This all just came about after the agenda was passed, and I'm not in I promised you all, I'm not trying to give you things that we don't put on the agenda a week ahead of time, but we didn't know about this. We kept trying to problem solve it because it's a $29,762.48 expenditure, But as I also promised you, I'm not going to bring to you something that I haven't earmarked where we're going to take the funds. And we went back and we looked at our, there's a capital maintenance account that involves this complex that we're not going to spend this amount of money in that fund. So not only, you know, it's unfortunate we have to buy a new server, and the sooner we get it, the better off we're going to be. This includes the install of it and the maintenance of it from our current vendor. And my hope is that they can refurbish the existing server that we're replacing and have that as a spare server in the future. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing. So what I'd ask, if we can, I'm not sure what the proper motion is to bring up the emergency things, Mr. City Attorney, but, you know, I could have a special meeting later, but I just thought since we're all here, if I can hear your comments on it, and maybe a motion to approve an emergency expenditure.
Let's see, have some board discussion and then decide what to do.
First off, Mr. City Manager, this is exactly the way you put a memorandum together. And if you're looking for a budget amendment, there's only two ways to get a budget amendment out of my sheet, but it's for an emergency, or you've blown out your revenue number by so much that we can go back and look at some other things on it. You've also gone and done something that hasn't been done around here in a really long time, and you're showing us exactly where the money's coming from and how it doesn't affect the budget. So, you know what? I'm all in. I want to make a motion to approve the network server for the amount of $29,762.48 coming from Fund 001-1400-6318.
I'll second.
I'll open it for public comment. Public comment is closed. Any more discussion? Will City Clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges?
Yes.
Commissioner Weinstein?
Yes.
Commissioner Douthert?
Yes.
Mayor Black?
Yes.
Thank you. I promise a quick update on the generator, and we can go through this again at the workshop, but I did go and research the historical aspect of the generator, and I guess when it came before the commission, and I wasn't aware the updates didn't make it to you all, so I apologize, and you know, we're going to make sure that we keep everybody in the loop. But when it came before you, you all were absolutely correct. The generator that was at the fire station, or the fire station, was proposed to be upgraded to a very large extent to cover the capacity of City Hall. Or I'm sorry, they were putting in a new generator, and then the other generator was to be sent down to Recreation, their building down there. I'll address the last part first. You don't really put a generator somewhere to have an evacuation shelter in an evacuation zone. So the thought process that they had back then, you know, and again, it's emergency management 101 pretty much. The aspect of having the generator over at the fire department, you know, upsizing it with a new generator and then running the cabling over, which would actually have to go to the west end of this particular building here, was inefficient and too costly by the time you trench it and hit our transformer that's on the west end of the building. So that's where they realized where they had to make the change. Where staff failed to do is communicate back with you all. And so that won't happen under my watch. So in communicating with you now, I still don't have all of the numbers worked out. I'm told that it shouldn't be more than $250,000 to get the generator and the structure that's going to be elevated at 10 feet because we are in a flood area, and the finishes will be, you know, correspond with the finishes that we have on our building here. So you wouldn't know basically that there was a generator behind the walls unless you knew it. But I will come back with you with all the facts and figures, which we should have together by the workshop meeting, and I'll report on that to you. And I think that's all I need to update you on right now.
Thank you. City Clerk, any reports or correspondence?
Yes, I'll be putting together a charter review committee meeting. It's on those charter amendments that was talked about a couple of months ago. And I'll contact all the members and try putting that together in the next month. Because if we go forward with it, I'll need time to do the ordinance and everything and get it adopted for the March ballot.
All right, thank you. There being no further business, we are adjourned at 8:36.